One common Orthodox counter-missionary argument claims Stephen made a basic Torah error in Act 7. They say he confused Machpelah with Shechem, Abraham with Jacob, and Ephron with the sons of Hamor. But that argument assumes Act 7 must read like a modern academic footnote. Stephen was giving a compressed Jewish courtroom speech. Act says Jacob went down to Egypt, died, and so did our fathers. Then it says they were brought back to Shechem. The plural they matters. Stephen's focus is not only Jacob's individual burial, but the broader ancestral burial tradition connected to the patriarchal fathers. The Torah is clear that Jacob was buried at Machpelah, near Hebron. That cave was purchased by Abraham from Ephron the Hittite. No messianic reading needs to deny that. The issue is whether Stephen is isolating Jacob alone, or compressing multiple patriarchal burial traditions. Joshua 24 says Joseph's bones were buried at Shechem. That land was connected to Jacob's purchase from the sons of Hamor in Genesis 33. So Shechem is not random. It is already a Torah-based burial and inheritance location tied to Joseph and Israel's ancestral memory. The Torah gives two major burial location traditions. Machpelah belongs to Abraham's purchase from Ephron. Shechem belongs to Jacob's purchase from Hamor's sons and Joseph's burial. Stephen's speech compresses these ancestral memories into a rapid covenant history summary. Ancient Jewish retellings often summarized events thematically. They group people, places, and covenant memories together. This appears in Jewish retellings such as Josephus, Jubilees, Philo, and later Midrashic traditions. Stephen's speech fits that ancient Jewish rhetorical world. Orthodox polemics often treat Act 7 as if Stephen was writing a modern academic commentary, but he was not. He was speaking before the Sanhedrin, summarizing Israel's history rapidly, thematically, and prophetically. That style is normal in ancient Jewish speech. Act 7 also says 75 persons went down to Egypt. Critics claim this contradicts the Masoretic text, which says 70. But the Septuagint has 75, and Dead Sea Scroll evidence supports the 75 textual tradition. This is extremely important. Stephen was not inventing Christian history. He was using a real Jewish textual tradition known in the Second Temple period. The later Masoretic form is not the only ancient witness. Qumran proves textual plurality existed. The Masoretic text is important, but it reflects a later standardized Hebrew textual tradition. The Dead Sea Scrolls show that multiple Hebrew textual forms existed before that standardization. So Orthodox arguments cannot automatically treat the medieval Masoretic form as the only ancient reading. There were broader Jewish and Samaritan traditions connecting patriarchal memory with Shechem. Jerome later mentions traditions of patriarchal tombs at Shechem. So Shechem was not merely a random error. It carried deep ancestral and covenantal significance. Shechem also held major significance in Samaritan tradition. It was connected to covenant memory, ancestral land, and sacred geography. Stephen's audience lived in a world where these traditions were known. Modern polemics flatten that world into one narrow reading. Stephen is not trying to rewrite Genesis. He is summarizing Israel's covenant history. Abraham, Jacob, the fathers, Egypt, Joseph, Shechem, and inheritance. The point is theological continuity, not modern chronological footnoting. The Orthodox objection only works if ancient Jewish speech must follow modern Western precision rules. But Second Temple Jewish interpretation used compression, paraphrase, thematic grouping, and traditional expansion. So the argument is historically anachronistic. Act 7 is complex, but complexity is not the same as contradiction. The passage reflects a Jewish interpretive world where textual traditions, ancestral memories, and covenant geography were summarized together. That is very different from Stephen being ignorant of Torah. Another Orthodox argument claims the women bringing spices to Yeshua's tomb is historically or halakhically impossible. But this is not a Torah objection. There is no Torah command that forbids women from honoring the dead, preparing spices, or visiting a tomb. Luke says the women prepared spices and ointments. Then they rested on Shabbat according to the commandment. After Shabbat, they came to the tomb. That sequence shows Torah observance, not Torah violation. John says Nicodemus brought myrrh and aloes. Then Yeshua's body was wrapped with spices. John explicitly says this was according to the burial custom of the Jews, so spices are not a Christian invention. The Torah gives purity laws concerning corpse contact, but it does not say women cannot participate in burial, mourning, spices, or honoring the dead. If someone claims this is forbidden, they must show the Torah command. There is no such command. Even later rabbinic material does not support the claim that anointing or washing the dead was forbidden. Mishnah Shabbat 23:5 allows the needs of the dead, including smearing oil and rinsing with water, within Shabbat-related limits. The real issue is that later halakhic assumptions are being projected backward onto first-century Jewish practice. The women in the Gospels are not violating Torah. They are doing what Jewish mourners did, honoring the dead after Shabbat. Another mistake is saying the women came after 3 modern full days. The Gospels use Jewish inclusive reckoning. Yeshua was buried before Shabbat. The women rested on Shabbat. They came early on the first day of the week. The Gospel burial narrative fits Jewish culture. There is haste before Shabbat. There is preparation of spices. There is Sabbath rest. There is return to the tomb after Shabbat. This is exactly the kind of detail expected in a Jewish burial context. Both objections use the same method. First, impose later assumptions onto the first century. Then accuse the Brit-Ha-Chadasha of error when it does not follow those later assumptions. That is not careful historical analysis. Act 7 reflects Jewish textual and interpretive traditions. The 75 number proves Stephen is using an ancient Jewish textual form supported by the Septuagint and Qumran. That alone destroys the claim that he is simply ignorant of Torah. The burial objection fails because Stephen's summary is compressed, not necessarily confused. The tomb objection fails. Jacob belongs to Machpelah. Joseph belongs to Shechem. The fathers, bones, land, and inheritance traditions are summarized together in covenant history speech. The women and spices objection fails because Torah never forbids it. Jewish burial use spices. Luke shows Shabbat observance. John calls spice wrapping Jewish burial custom. Even later, Mishnah allows care for the dead. These are not cases of Torah defeating the new covenant. They are cases of later polemics ignoring Second Temple context, ancient textual plurality, Jewish rhetorical compression, and actual burial culture. That distinction matters. If Orthodox critics claim Acts contains a fatal error, they must prove Stephen's audience required modern footnote precision. If they claim women were forbidden from burial spices, they must show the Torah command. They cannot. The objections collapse when examined historically. Act 7 reflects Second Temple Jewish textual tradition and compressed covenant history speech. The women at the tomb reflect Jewish burial practice and Shabbat observance. These are not contradictions. They are ancient Jewish contexts being misread by later polemics.